Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight.
The Prime Minister weighs in on those meetings with union leaders yesterday.
Meanwhile, nurses go through their second strike vote of the year. And an immigration court battle heads to the Privy Council.
Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Jared Higgs. Topping news tonight amid growing threats of industrial action by some of the country's biggest unions. Prime Minister Dr. Hubert MINNIS asserted today he is more concerned about his Junkanoo group, the Saxon Superstars, winning the Boxing Day Junkanoo Parade than he is about a national strike. His comments come 24 hours after union leaders panned a 3-hour sit-down with the Prime Minister at his office. Jasmine Brown reports.
The Prime Minister says following those marathon meetings, the least of his worries is the possibility of a national strike.
And any worries of a national strike?
No. I'm more worried about other matters.
And the Prime Minister did not stop there as he joked about being more interested in the Junkanoo parades.
I'm more worried right now and concerned whether the Saxon's going to win Junkanoo Christmas. That's what I'm gearing up for. You pull for us, don't you?
Thank you.
You know the Saxon?
I don't want to comment on that.
Dr. MINNIS was responding to some union leaders who told reporters yesterday that they were not satisfied with their meeting with the Prime Minister. More than 40 leaders from 30 unions showed up at the office of the Prime Minister for the 3-hour meeting with MINNIS and Labour Minister Dion Fowkes. Fowkes said the meeting went very well and that he was very pleased that the leaders had accepted an invitation to meet with the government. However, some of the union heads shot down that assertion and said they were not hopeful that the meeting would bring a resolution to their issues. When asked about those concerns, the Prime Minister said this.
It was very informative. I obtained a lot of information that I had gathered from them. I will inform my Labour Minister to meet with the relevant unions so as to deal with the matters. Some of the problems go way back 15 years, I wasn't even here. And then I'm saddled with 15 years of problems, but so be it, we had a cap, so.
As it relates to the Consultants Physician Staff Association, whose withdrawal of services continues for the 7th straight day, a meeting that was slated for today has been rescheduled for Wednesday. The Prime Minister says his administration is currently looking to see if there is any wiggle room in the budget to meet their demand.
So we can look at whether we have any type of wiggle room, but under no, we've just introduced a fiscal policy program, and therefore under no circumstances can we to any degree jeopardize our international financial standings. We're being reviewed by the OECD, etc. So all those matters has to be taken into consideration.
Prime Minister says at the end of the day, they want to address those concerns in a fiscally responsible manner. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Well, after the Prime Minister was slammed on social media for his comments, his press secretary Anthony Newbold issued a statement in his defense, insisting he was simply seeking to engage the media in a moment of light humor. The statement reads, the Prime Minister at no time sought to make light of or diminish the seriousness of labour issues or the concerns of workers within the country. It was only after giving a clear response to the question that the Prime Minister sought to use the opportunity as an avid Junkanooer and a member of the Saxon Superstars to have a light-hearted moment with the media. The Prime Minister meant no disrespect to unions, labour or workers, and had also indicated that his time spent with union leaders provided him with the opportunity to receive a brief history of the issues they have faced over the past 15 years. Moving on, the majority of nurses who took part in a strike poll today voted overwhelmingly in favour of striking, according to Bahamas Nurses Union President Amantia Williams and Acting Labour Director John Pinder. Though officials say numbers are still coming in from the Family Islands, more than 500 nurses in New Providence and Grand Bahama voted in favour of striking. Gillian Gray reports.
6 months after 377 nurses voted to strike, approximately 2,000 nurses had their opportunity to make their voices heard once again during a strike poll. Polls opened at 9 a.m. and closed at 5 p.m. Nurses in New Providence voted at Princess Margaret Hospital, Sandilands Rehabilitation Center, and South Beach Clinic. The strike poll comes one day after leaders of the Bahamas Nurses Union met with the Prime Minister to discuss their concerns. Union officials said they left that meeting disappointed and empty-handed. Commenting on the strike poll today, Health Minister Dr. DUANE said while the government supports democracy, officials are working to ensure all matters are resolved.
We live in a democracy, and I think in a democracy, unions have the right to take strike votes, and this will play out. The PHA and the Ministry of Health continue to work in good faith to get this matter resolved.
When we spoke to Nurses Union President Amantia Williams, she said nurses showed up in full force on Tuesday, especially those in Grand Bahama, where she says they are extremely disappointed with the state of health care. The nurses are at odds with PHA over a new shift system, which is proposed to be implemented on December 10th. This is the Nurses Union's second strike poll in 6 months. Back in June, 377 nurses voted to strike, while 7 voted no. However, that poll was deemed null and void by the Ministry of Labor, who argued that some nurses did not have an opportunity to vote. While they are working to bring some resolve, the health minister said they must not make their decision in isolation.
As you attempt to resolve for one, you cannot only think about that one group in isolation. You have to think of it holistically. And so if you think about nurses, then you also have to be concerned about lawyers, doctors, teachers, firemen, defense force officers, line staff, clerks, etc. Because all of us live in this country together, and no single group should have an unfair advantage over the others.
The Nurses Union, the Doctors Union, and the Consultant Physician Staff Association are all at odds with PHA. The Medical Association of the Bahamas has come out in support of healthcare professionals and accused PHA of gambling with healthcare. The health minister was asked to respond to that.
We're not going to get in a tit for tat. Let us sit down at the table, let us discuss the issues, and within the confines of the reality of the Bahamian public's ability to sustain a compensation package for any particular group of individuals. Let's see how close we can get to that.
The Nurses Union has previously said its members would withdraw services on December 10th if their concerns are not adequately addressed. Reporting for our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
Thank you, Jillian. The man at the center of an immigration legal battle has been granted leave to take his fight to the highest court of appeal. Bahamas-born RONY John Charles was thrust into headlines last year when he was deported to Haiti and subsequently ordered returned to the Bahamas. Today, his attorney sought to take that constitutional case before the Privy Council in London. After successfully applying for leave in the Court of Appeal, RONY John Charles will take his immigration fight to the UK-based Privy Council.
How do you feel about this?
I feel great.
Yeah?
I got too much to say.
Nothing much more to say? I'll speak for Mr. RONY.
Back in January, Supreme Court Justice Gregory Hilton ruled that RONY John Charles's constitutional rights were violated when he was unlawfully detained and deported. Hilton ordered that John Charles, who was deported to Haiti, be issued a travel document and returned to the country. In addition, the court ordered that John Charles be granted status upon application. However, in October, the Court of Appeal quashed that decision, saying that Hilton ought not to have considered an application for constitutional relief before determining whether RONY John Charles and the John Charles deported by immigration officials in November 2017 were the same person. Following that ruling, John Charles's legal team, led by attorney Fred Smith QC, indicated that they would apply for leave to appeal the decision at the Privy Council. Crown Counsel Lauren Klein opposed John Charles's application during a hearing on Tuesday morning, saying the Court of Appeal hadn't addressed constitutional relief. The Court of Appeal panel, made up of President Sir Hartman Longley, Justice of Appeal John Isaacs, and Acting Justice of Appeal Sir Michael Barnett, didn't agree with Klein, ruling that leave should be granted to John Charles to take the matter to the UK-based court.
We're very pleased to say that we got permission from the Court of Appeal to appeal Mr. Gene RONY's case to the Privy Council. It's, as the President said, this is a matter of great public importance, and I think it's only I think it's going to be good for the development of jurisprudence in the Bahamas for the Privy Council to have an opportunity to consider the issues.
Prior to granting leave, Acting Justice of Appeal Sir Michael Barnett told the court that he couldn't see how they could avoid saying John Ronny's appeal to the Privy Council is an application for constitutional relief. He says the Court of Appeal decided that the matter wasn't properly before the judge, and John Ronny's legal team contended that it was, and they may be right.
The appeal was from a constitutional motion from Justice Hilton. They dismissed that and set the judgment aside, and so we have the right to go to the Privy Council to have the constitutional matters dealt with. And so, unfortunately, the court didn't agree with Mr. Klein. They agreed with him before, but not on this occasion.
On the heels of that double murder, which robbed the little boy of both of his parents, National Security Minister Marvin revealed that police investigations into the matter are progressing. Thames says it is unclear if the men who killed 33-year-old Neil DeVoe and his girlfriend outside Sandilands Rehabilitation Centre on Monday are connected to a shooting incident involving DeVoe back in August. He says when police interviewed DeVoe back then, he provided very little information.
That same individual was shot more than a month ago. Was when the police interviewed him, was not giving much information in relation to how he was shot. Whether these matters are connected, we're unable to say. But what we can say to this point is that we're pleased in respect to how the investigations are progressing in relation to this matter.
80 people have been murdered in the Bahamas so far this year. Dame says while the murder rate continues to trend downward, he is very disturbed by this latest incident.
If we want to look at numbers, when you compare this year with previous years, there is no comparison. The numbers are down. But every serious incident is a cause for concern. And the incident yesterday is no different. I'm very disturbed by that. When individuals can take the lives of others, be it day or night, but especially in public places.
Police plan to beef up patrols in the Fox Hill area following the double murder. Dame says there is a small group of criminals who are taking the law into their own hands when they're not in prison.
We know who they are, and we're not gonna tolerate that in this society, and we will go after them until they are brought to justice.
Public Service Minister ROLLE is slamming suggestions that government cut 2,500 public service jobs since coming to office. This comes as a top civil servant blasted the country's civil service as being overstaffed by as much as 40%.
Well, I see all kind of foolish numbers in the press about 1,000 and stuff. That's not true. I can't tell you specifically, but I know it's less than 400 persons.
Back in January, Department of Statistics officials revealed that a 0.2% increase in unemployment was attributed, in part, to a more than 6% reduction in public service jobs. ROLLE estimated that the public service is made up of more than 20,000 workers and took issue with reports in the press suggesting that more than 1,000 jobs were cut. In fact, media have previously reported direct figures from the Department of Statistics that public sector jobs fell under this administration from 40,990 to 38,435. That's 2,555 jobs. ROLLE dismissed that Department of Statistics figure.
Absolutely not. We could not release 2,500 individuals. What perhaps they were talking about, persons whose contract had expired, persons who were given specific date to exit the service, persons who were engaged or were called back to the service for small projects. Those are the kinds of things I think people look at and try to count to, and to say that we went out there and strategically disengaged 2,500 people is not factual.
The comments from the Public Service Minister come as an IDB report revealed that Cabinet Secretary Camille Johnson slammed deputy permanent secretaries in the country as extraordinarily weak. In addition, the top civil servant revealed that the public service was overstaffed by as much as 40%.
We acknowledge that there are some challenges, but we see these as opportunities, and that's why the Prime Minister so ably pivoted to establishing a modernization unit for the public service and a delivery unit for the public service, which in fact is a signal to the public that we're going to make changes.
ROLLE added that while there is a criticism to be made, some civil servants should be commended.
What I embraced was the fact that they are wonderful public officers. There are hundreds of them in the public service. They are striving daily to deliver services to the public, and therefore we're focusing on training and making sure that we can deliver what the public asks.
Still to come on our news, another case of swine flu confirmed. Plus, what the Prime Minister is saying about the former BPL chairman's lawsuit. That's coming up when our news returns.